Greetings, fellow Pikers, and welcome to the PikeCast. I'm Cooper Beckett, and I'm thrilled to be joined by my lovely co-host, Cassie.
Hello.
Today, we are digging into Christopher Pike's 1995 book, The Visitor, and we're going to be dissecting it, it's a good word, in great detail, spoiling each and every plot twist, so consider yourself warned. If you're enjoying the PikeCast, please leave us a review on the podcast service of your choice. And now let's welcome our guest piker, the co-host of the Ghosts N Heauxs podcast, where they talk true crime and the paranormal, Z. We are thrilled to have you here, Z.
Thank you. I am stoked to finally be here.
And we're stoked to be back. It's been a little while, and as people who listened to the last episode know, there was some talk about reading Christopher Pike's Cheerleaders book.
Oh.
Reading a little bit of it, we decided to just call it an April Fool's joke and move on.
I've seen it in the wild, but I've never made the attempt myself. So good for you, because
yeah, I got about halfway through it, and
yeah,
I was exhausted. Like, it made me so tired.
It seems like a completely weird one-off situation.
Yeah, totally.
For ye old sea pike.
So we start with guests by asking them some questions.
Yeah.
Cassie, would you like to ask the first question?
So Z, please tell us how you got into Christopher Pike.
Ooh, okay. So growing up, I was always more of one of the spooky kids in school.
No, we can't relate to that at all.
Weird. Never. I when I was 3, I snuck into the basement and watched all of Hellraiser 2. So ever since then, it was like all horror all the time. That's all I wanted. My family's like, "Are you sure you don't want the princess movie or the princess?" I'm like, "Absolutely not." So I started reading all kinds of things I shouldn't have very young. And then I did all the Goosebumps books, and Fear Street, every time a new one came out, I was like right there, take my money. And I don't remember the first Christopher Pike book I read, but I remember seeing the covers at the bookstore, and there weren't any new to me Fear Street books at the time. And so I was like, oh, well, this also looks kind of like my jam. So let's get a couple of these and see what's what. And wow.
Yeah, going from Fear Street to this, I imagine, was a bit of an eye-opening.
Yeah, because Christopher Pike really just has some things to say. And
he does. He brings it.
You're gonna, whether you're ready for a message or not, you're getting one. You're getting one. I think the one I remember reading first was the one about the ancient goddess, the
Immortal.
Yes, thank you. I remember that one really sticking with me, and I think that was one of the first few that I read, because I used to do competitive dance, and so we would travel a lot, and I would take books, like several books with me. Every time we did.
Well, those books were so great because they were so small.
Exactly. So I just had all these books with me, and I remember that one being one of the first Pike books that I was like, what? This is incredible. My tiny brain was just like, there's so much craziness happening, and I like it.
Well, what is the thing that this many years later still keeps him in the front of your mind?
Just something about the writing and the way he crafts a story just kind of sticks with me. Like, to this day, I will randomly just think about plot points from Whisper of Death and Remember Me.
Yes.
Like, my brain just is just like, hey, remember that one time this happened in the book that you read when you were 13 100 years ago? I'm like, yeah, that was really good.
And it's funny because, we get accused of not liking Pike a lot, which is weird because we've really liked many of his books.
It's just, healthy criticism sometimes.
Yeah, and the thing is, you don't you don't stick in someone's mind for as long as Pike does with seemingly everybody.
Exactly.
And not have something special there, you know?
Exactly. Like there's always going to be detractors, sure, but not this guy. Like I mean generally. Today might be different. Today might be a different story.
Yeah. Today yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you have a favorite Pike book?
Do I have a favorite Pike book? Oh man. Whisper of Death, I think, is definitely gonna take that moniker of favorite because it has stuck with me for so very long. Like I just remember reading it because back in the day, everything you read seemed to have like a pretty straightforward, like, this is the story, this is what happens, this is the end. And then,
it was a scene follows a scene follows a scene.
Exactly. And this one you're like, well, everything is a lie. What just happened? Like, is anything real? Just so that one I remember so much about it and being like, I want to write something like that someday.
Okay, well, I think we've put it off long enough. Let's talk about 1995's The Visitor. And we'll start by reading the back of the book. Cassie, you got that?
Yes, I do. He was out of this world. Tom was not like a normal teenager. First off, he looked weird. He was too tall, too thin, and his hair was practically white. Also, he had incredible eyes. When you looked into them, you felt like you were staring into deep space. Some thought he was from outer space. Almost everyone believed he was a nice guy. But was Tom really nice? Was he even human? Dun dun dun.
So do you think that's the pitch that Pike gave the
I don't see
publisher?
how. I would be mad if that was the pitch and then this is the book.
Yeah, absolutely not.
I mean, Tom doesn't even show up until like after 100 pages in.
I was like,
yeah,
why is this? Why?
Wow.
Why is this? That's the end of the question.
I completely forgot. So this time I did read the back and then I totally forgot it once I started reading the book because it was immediately Mary. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. And then I just completely forgot that Tom was even a thing until like 100 pages in.
Right, until he shows up and you're like, oh, yeah. The guy from the back of the book that really has not a whole lot to do with anything.
I know him.
Like,
what a weird...
It is absolutely bizarre to me that was the choice they went with for the back of the book.
Well, I also am thrown off because this is one of the later Pike covers, but it came out during the time of the early Pike covers. So I'm wondering... Yeah, this is the cutout one. But I'm wondering if there was another edition of it.
Oh.
Because, it came out the same year as the Midnight Club. Why on earth would it have the cutout and not a Brian Kotsky cover?
Yeah, well, because The Lost Mind also had a cutout, and that came out around the same time.
Maybe they would just choose which ones had the good covers and which ones were less important.
Maybe the more metaphysical ones had the covers because they wanted them to be a little bit enticing. They're like, ooh, look, this one has an extra thing to it.
Look, open it up. You've already picked up the book. You may as well just buy it.
Yeah, but the more pulpy, actual horror ones just have the Brian Kotsky art.
Well, so the back of the book does not accurately capture what's inside.
Not even a little.
Not even a little. No. How about the cutout cover?
Mine is a fake cutout cover. I don't know if yours is the same.
Mine is too.
Okay,
we got a little dragon thing.
A dragon gargoyle holding a crystal ball.
It's a crystal ball.
Crystal ball.
Yeah, it's just a little stand, but it's weird.
Yeah.
And it says they did not invite him. Which, again, if I had actually looked at the cover and read the back before I was reading this book, I would have been so confused.
Honestly, I read the book and I'm so confused.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's also that.
That is absolutely fair.
But that's a whole different discussion at this point.
Yeah, I just now realized that the the art is, I always just assumed there was something giant on top of this bookshelf, not realizing that they're zooming in on the crystal ball and candles above the people, and it just now hit me that that's what that was. I was like, it's weird that it's on there twice. I'm like, oh, now I get it. Wow, okay.
Also, which people are these? Because I thought Ken was supposed to. He's like blonde, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, they never like the artist is just making it up. Really.
Yeah, that's right. There's like 2 guys and 2 girls draw them, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna wing it.
There was definitely more people in there.
Yeah.
I thought there were the twin girls.
Yes,
I wish it had a Ouija board on it. That would have been better.
Yes.
Well, actually, I mean, they bring up the point that Parker Brothers was the copyright holder for the Ouija board at that point.
I did love that they called it the William Fuld message indicator. Like that. I truly did absolutely love that so much. I'm like, yes, this is so great.
Well, shall we move to the Midnight Club and start talking about these characters?
I suppose.
If we have to.
Do you like how everything I'm doing, everything I'm saying sounds like I'm already tired of it?
Yeah. It's so fair, though.
I apologize, listeners, because, like, you know, we were not kind to Remember Me 3, which really deserved it. I don't think we're going to be terribly kind to this book either. So if you're one of those who thinks we just hate all Pike, I encourage you to go back and listen to one of our 4- and 5-star podcasts, because we do love Christopher Pike.
We do.
I did not love this book, though.
Sometimes I don't love all of his choices.
Mary Weast. This is the least likable character. I mean, even when she's not completely gone off the deep end.
Yeah.
She is so unlikable.
She truly is a garbage person. Like, she, like, I get it. She was going through some stuff, but she was making her problems everybody else's problems.
Yes.
Like, I didn't particularly care for her as a character, but that said, I do appreciate a story with a character like that, where you're like, well, I really don't like you, but interesting choice. Like that doesn't really happen that often.
Well, it's also an interesting choice, I think, for a character to start off unlikable and then only get more unlikable.
Like just
like until the story does an abrupt 180 and we're supposed to feel like redemption happened.
It didn't.
Isn't that what we're supposed to feel?
I think so. We'll get there, but I think that's what we're supposed to get from this.
I did not.
Let me give us some description of Mary Weast. And Mary was certainly beautiful, but not in a traditional homecoming princess way. She was ethereal. Her attraction seemed to spring from another dimension. Her eyes were such a dark blue they appeared black. She had copper-brown skin, inherited from neither of her parents, which might have been concerning for her parents. I would think. At least for her father.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Her hair was the same color brown, unbelievably thick and wavy. Her body was virtually flawless. Mary's beauty was part of her psyche. She carried it with her into every situation, but she never flaunted it, at least not intentionally. It was just that people automatically reacted to the power of her physical presence. She didn't merely turn heads, but imaginations. Dear God. You know what? Like, going back to this after having read the rest of the book, I'm just really annoyed by it.
Yeah. Like, reading the book, that description, I can tell you 100% that I totally forgot that that's what she was supposed to look like as I'm reading it, because that description, I'm sorry, sounds absolutely unhinged.
Yeah, completely. Pike has built her up. And you know what? I really should have seen the twist coming. With the amount of times she is mentioned as being like a goddess.
Yeah.
But for once, I was completely perplexed. I mean, it may be that this plot makes no sense.
Yes.
That might be the problem.
I think that is definitely part of it.
That is a problem with this book.
I feel like he had a bunch of different like post-it notes left over from past storyboards. And they're just like, let's throw all of these together and get rid of them so I can start clean slate for the next one. Like, let's just take.
And how can we bring it all together? Well, let's just take the opening of Remember Me and put that in there. And I've got some leftover Egypt stuff. It doesn't belong. No. Well, let's put that in there. And I want to write something about the gray aliens and a spaceship.
Yeah.
Let's put that in there.
Just for fun. Let's just...
It's like, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Hard that.
Mary's boyfriend, Jerry Rickman, was shot to death a month ago. I thought it was a year ago, but it was a month ago. And mostly I think I thought it was a year ago because most of Pike's dead boyfriends were dead a year ago. We don't really get much of Jerry.
Until we do.
Until we get dead Jerry, yeah. We do get a little bit about Jerry's character when we talk about poor Ken, Jerry's younger brother. Who is introduced as Ken was not as handsome as Jerry. Jerry had been cut from marble. Ken was paper mache.
Oh.
I mean, that's just shitty. He was not merely thin, but malnourished. Ken wore large black frame glasses perched on top of his nose. He was only 16, but already chronically slouched. Wisps of blonde hair fell over his forehead and eyes. He had a kind smile, a hesitant but sincere manner of speaking. And so Mary goes to this party, and we meet Ken, and Mary's already fucking drunk.
Yeah.
Like, drunk in an unlikably drunk way.
Yeah, in the somebody take that girl home immediately before.
Yeah.
Something happens.
You've had way too many. We're going to cut you off now.
Oh, yeah.
So let's move on to the weirdest name in the book, Savvy.
Yeah.
That's not a name. That's not even almost a name.
At first I was like,
Davy is a name.
Right? Was it a typo and you just went with it? Was he trying to be creative? Which actually there is something later in the book that touches on names, and I was like,
Oh yes. We're going to talk about that. Yes.
Yeah, Savvy. I was like,
sure.
Is it Savvy? Is it supposed to be short for like Savannah or something? Which is an unlikely male name. But that was, and then I was like, I don't know, because I keep reading it as Savvy because that's exactly how it's spelled. And either way,
Savoy is a thing too. Maybe that. I mean, like, there's a lot of things that are, and that's pretty typical Pike. So I think we shouldn't analyze it too far. Where Pike comes up with a character name that nobody has ever named a single person in the world,
right,
and just loves it and goes with it.
I'm like, okay, but yeah, that was a choice that I don't think I'll ever understand.
Savvy. Yeah, Savvy had been Jerry's best friend, and of course, now he was in love with Mary. Savvy did, as a matter of fact, look damn fine. He was 6 foot, wiry, with a shock of dark brown hair that fit his budding rock star persona perfectly. He wore expensive clothes, silk shirts, leather pants, and jackets. His cheekbones were prominent, framing his deep-set gray eyes. His hands were large but fine. He could play guitar as well as sing. He was always laughing, and his smile was mesmerizing.
Yeah.
And his band was called Cool Covers.
I wrote that on my notes, yeah.
So so dumb.
Cool Covers.
That's terrible.
Well,
It is, right? Like
someone-
that's the terrible name.
it's awful. Is someone named Savvy, though? Maybe he's not really good with names.
That's fair.
Savvy's Band is a better name than Cool Covers.
Yes.
It's just I would respect it more if it wasn't a cover band. The fact that it's a cover band exclusively and it's called Cool Covers, that's just too much. It's not even ironically funny at that point. It's just sad, and I don't like it.
It's like a dad
Yes.
joke gone way too
Yeah.
far.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of dads, we also get Savvy in his introduction weirdly hitting on Mary's mother in front of Dad and then ribbing Dad about it. It's really like, the creepiest Eddie Haskell bullshit. And I didn't like it. It made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was definitely weird.
Savvy, let's see. That was one of the good things about Savvy. He was desperate to make love to her, perhaps desperate in his own sick way to feel that a part of Jerry survived through him. Pike, just because you call it out as sick does not mean we want to hear it.
Yeah. We didn't need the
'Cause
detail.
That's a little icky, I think.
It was super icky. Like, that was his sole... like, why is that your sole reason for existing, is to bone
Yeah.
your dead best friend's girlfriend? Like, that seems like a weird flex.
We've got a little incel energy going on with Savvy, I
Just
think.
a bit. Just
Although Savvy seems to be having sex with everybody else, so,
also true.
But I mean, Mary is a goddess. So, let's talk about Pamela Poole.
Ooh.
Pamela's father is the mayor. Did you remember that? I didn't remember that
No.
when I found out that the mayor blinded Mr. Barker with acid.
Right?
Oh.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Blinded him with acid.
That's right. My brain...
Like, I feel like that should have come up again, right?
100. I would love to have just had a book about Mr. Barker and that whole situation
Yes.
instead of the
Yes.
handful of pages we got about that story. So I'm like, I feel like that is a much more interesting story than the one
Yeah,
this
dear
is
God.
happening around. Like, so like seeing a weird mist figure and then being blinded soon after, and then all these babies show up.
Oh, my God.
9 months after the creepy ghost, probably alien entity, the entity mist.
The entity.
The
yes.
entity mist.
The entity mist. That's somehow
Yeah.
in Idaho.
That's another thing my brain did not recall, is that was in Idaho.
Yeah.
I think,
Doesn't make any sense.
no, I think it's just because I also forget Idaho is a place, just in general. Even though I have so many family members in Idaho, I just forget that it's there. So that's not entirely Christopher Pike's fault. That's a me thing, I think.
Fair enough.
But yeah, Mr. Barker was definitely the most likable character.
Yeah.
I feel like the most interesting as well, and he was not in it nearly enough for my taste.
Well, let's talk about Mr. Barker, and then we'll move back to Pamela. He's blind.
Yep.
He's old. He runs the movie theater and gives all sorts of people money to see movies when they can't. Oh, I mean, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Somehow he can hear good special effects from bad special effects.
Impressive.
So he's magic. And then Mary dismisses him with, he was ancient and close to death, but he was a content old fart.
Oh, but I really feel like he couldn't be that old. Like,
Yeah.
maximum, he's got to be
he's-
like 65 max, which is
Well, and
that
like,
old.
he's the parents' age.
Exactly. So they can't, and they're not that old. He's the same age as their parents. I mean,
So these
yeah.
parents are probably 35 in a way that makes me very uncomfortable.
Same. But yeah,
So-
She
it's like
herself
when,
is like 5,000, so I mean,
Yes, well, yeah. I
anybody
mean,
here is old.
she shouldn't be talking about who's old.
exactly. You want to talk about the oldest people in this godforsaken Idaho town you're from, Mary? It's you. You're the ancient one here.
When back to Pamela, Mary, this was part of my problematic section, but really, I mean, Mary's unbiased and non-judgmental opinion, Pamela Poole was a total slut. Like, there's a lot of weird slut shaming,
Yeah.
but she had an incredible voice. She was head cheerleader, and her voice had the power of persuasion. If the football team needed to score, she told it to. I actually really like that.
Oh, I thought that was a dirty joke.
Oh,
I thought they were calling her. I thought that was more of a slut joke.
well, maybe it's both. I mean, I could totally see that now that you mentioned that.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm really thinking about it. I'm like, oh,
Well, let's
see.
fill out the character of Pamela. She had a large mouth, comma, very sexy.
Okay, Pike, we get it.
She had large breasts as well. Pamela was a three-dimensional blonde cutout who drew a tan from the winter snow. That's also a lovely little line there that's sandwiched in between bullshit.
It's just how big her boobs are, and here's this nice little line of poetry for ya.
She drew a tan from the winter. Like, that's legitimately lovely. But then we go on. For 4 years, she had planned on being Seedmon High's homecoming queen, but come their senior year, Mary had stolen the honor. Pamela both respected and hated Mary for it. There is an absurd amount of import placed on the honor of homecoming queen in this small town, especially considering one of the people putting that honor on it is a literal ancient goddess.
surprise. Yes. I think one of my favorite quotes from the book would have to be, "You're not a god. You're not even homecoming queen."
Yeah, what?
Burn!
I mean, it's funny. I don't know that it's supposed to be funny, but it is.
It feels very Cordelia Chase, Buffy the Vampire
Yeah.
Slayer kind of insult. And
I don't know. I'd put it
livid.
more at Harmony than
Ooh.
Cordy.
Well, Harmony never
It's
got any
got
good
the same
lines.
energy as like you're a virgin who can't drive, and I love it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Now, I did find what I think is a mistake. Pamela had been Jerry's first boyfriend.
So that was in mine too.
Oh.
No,
I don't know
okay.
if that was in mine. Wait, what page is it on?
Oh,
Oh,
I'm not sure.
damn.
I remember seeing that in mine.
Yeah, so boyfriend. I'm going to just assume that's supposed to be girlfriend. Let's talk about the Chester twins.
Oh, bless their hearts.
Ratty and
forgot about
Tori,
them.
two characters who really did not need to be in this book.
They didn't. Maybe that's why they left them out of the cover art.
And I mean, we talk a lot about Bob's Burgers on this
Oh, I love
podcast.
Bob's Burgers.
And truly, Ratty and Tori are the Andy and Ollie of this
Yeah.
book.
They really are. Oh my God.
Like, literally, "I don't get this," Ratty said to her sister. "I'll explain it to you later," Tori said confidently.
Right. And then something about one of them being a terrible speller. That's why they couldn't keep track.
Yes,
And they were doing the
like
Ouija board.
there were Ratty, who didn't count because she couldn't spell even when the letters were read to her one by one. I mean, this is literally how they're introduced. Ratty and Tori Chester were identical genetic specimens. They were geniuses together. Their combined IQs added up to 150. And for those of us who remember Forrest Gump, he had an IQ of 75, which means when either of these two are alone, they have IQs of 75.
Yeah.
Their teachers let them take tests together. for some reason.
Well,
It was
it's
the
a small
90s
town,
in Idaho.
So, yeah. So I feel like they're just we're not going to be the ones to hold these kids back. We're going to have to deal with their parents. Hell no.
Okay.
Like, put them together, send them off together. Like, they're going to go
Get them
through
out
life
of here
together, so it makes sense.
by any
yeah.
means necessary. Get 'em
Okay,
out.
that's fair.
Probably what happens to Andy and Ollie, too, to be fair.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
So both this is another Pikeism here. Both Ratty and Tori had wonderful red hair, green eyes, and soft freckled skin that glowed in the moonlight and peeled in the sun. That's also kind of lovely until it's followed with Savy, according to Savy, had slept with both of them at the same time.
Oh. Well.
They did, they do nothing at all in this book. Nothing.
Really don't.
And I'm not even saying that in a character pointless kind of metaphorical way. They literally have no point in being here except to fill out the numbers at this first Ouija session.
Yeah, their names remind me of that scene in Family Guy where Peter is just looking around the room and saying things and comes up with Peter Griffin, Rady, and Tori. Not Randy, Rady. And so I'm like, did he need a name? And he just looked at a radiator and was like, there it is.
And honestly, when I first read it, I misread Rady, and I thought, oh, well, here's our Indian princess name. But no.
Nope.
It's Radi for some reason.
Yep, or maybe
like Tori
pasta. I don't know, but
often.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, speaking of non-characters, Tom.
The back of the book, Tom.
Yeah, back of the book. The most important character in the book, according to the back of the book. He looks like sex with all the trimmings. His hair is so blonde, his eyes so blue, you just want to take him home and stuff him.
What?
And he has the most darling smile. I think I'm in love. This is Pamela describing him.
How is this the description in the book of him? But then on the back, it's like, first of all, he looked weird. He was too tall, too thin, and his hair was practically white. Like, yeah, what?
He has gorgeous white blonde hair. He deeply tanned, so tan that the color appeared genetic. Although on the thin side, he appeared to be strong, graceful, either in complete control of his surroundings or absolutely oblivious to them. Sure, that's a little weird, but that is not the character the back of the book promised us.
It is not.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you two ladies. We can talk about our aliens and we can talk about our Egyptians if you want in this section, or we can just talk about them when the plot comes up.
I am good either way.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't we move to Remember Me? Yeah. And do our plot discussion. Now, one thing that Christopher Pike did in this book is he reused other passages and chapters at times from earlier in the book. So not only is this a really short fucking book, but it also doubles up on some of its content, including the prayer of a false god, which I would like to dramatically read for you both. All are doomed to burn. Love feeds the flames, days of endless pains, and the smoke takes each in turn. All are doomed to rust. Time destroys our lives. Night cuts like knives, and the wind carries away the dust. All are doomed to love. All are doomed to die. Tonight, bring the black tomb for even the Most High. Even those in this room cannot pretend to fly. And I know, even you, even I, must die.
Snaps, Coopers.
Thank you. No, I kind of like that poem. But
when I read it in the book, I was like, I hope Cooper's going to do a dramatic reading. You were so much more dramatic than I could have even hoped for. Like,
Hey, you know, I live to make you happy, Cassie.
I don't think there's any way to read that but dramatically.
Yeah, no, you have to do it in the cadence of a beach poet shop, you know, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So one note about this is it's apparently from ancient Egypt. And as we all know, ancient Egypt is well known for its written text with ABBA rhyme scheme.
Obvious.
And not pictographs called hieroglyphics, which is what ancient Egyptian writing looked like, unless I'm mistaken.
Nope, pretty sure you're correct.
Yeah, so a prayer of a false god might be one thing, but who translated it?
Mary.
Who set it to an ABBA rhyme scheme? And how on earth is this prayer immediately identified by Ken as being from ancient Egypt?
I don't. It was impressive, Ken. It was an impressive move on Ken's part.
I mean, okay, so you know how sometimes I try to summarize the plot? That would be really tough, except for the fact that Mary literally summarizes the plot in the dumbest possible way in the last quarter of the book. So I thought I might read that also.
Yes.
So I cut off the beginning for some reason, but there was a seance with a Ouija board at a party. Yeah. You see, that spirit we spoke to on the Ouija board was really an alien named Clackster. He's been hanging around this planet for several thousand years, hoping to talk me into returning with him to outer space. Oh, I forgot to mention I'm an alien too. Don't ask me what star I'm from, though. I haven't the foggiest. I got trapped here in ancient Egypt when I tried playing the high goddess. Back then, I had this friend named Fairy,
Yeah.
Phairee, who was you, Jerry. No.
Pamela.
No, Fairy is Pamela.
Pamela, right, who is you in a past life, who caught me in bed with Jartine, who was Jerry in the past life. Fairy was as vain as I was about her looks. Her problem was that she wasn't an alien, so she kept getting older and older and grew more and more resentful of myself. When she caught me in bed with Jartine, she saw a chance to blackmail me. She demanded that I make her immortal, but I couldn't do that because it was against this thing called the law of life, and because I didn't know how to do it anyway. To make a long story short, you locked me in a black tomb with my dead lover, and I was stuck there practically forever. And now I'm going to repay the favor. Oh, wait, another thing. That new kid at school, Tom, is really Clackster. He already brought Jerry back from the dead. Yeah, isn't that incredible? Right now, Jerry's lying in my bed, but he's in bad shape. He looks like shit, and he's in terrible pain. He needs blood. That's what I think. And since you cut him open last time and he bled like crazy, I think the karma of the situation demands that I take your blood and give it to him.
Yep, that should have been on the back of the book. Just that whole speech.
I mean,
Also, Cooper, I know how you love a really long monologue. I didn't even think about sometimes, but like you must have really deeply hated this book for so many multi-layered reasons of why you dislike other Pike books.
Yeah, really, this is like the text of all the things I dislike in other Pike books.
Really is.
We take a ridiculous side jaunt to ancient Egypt in a dream.
Yep. Yep.
That lasts for 11 pages. And this is a book where there are chapters that are literally 2 paragraphs long. but for 11 pages.
Yep.
Before we know what's going on, our main character dreams of being another person in ancient Egypt for some reason.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Yep. Oh bless. I was like, well, I know this is going to have something to do with something else later, but I wish this would end.
That's so much of reading a Pike book. It's just like, I know this is going to be relevant.
This is
later.
probably going to come back.
Right,
this
like,
is probably going to be
that's key,
important.
because sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, no, right. Okay, well, let's. I mean.
Oh yeah, let's. Not...
Okay, so Mary's just fucking mopey for the first half of this book, drunk for a quarter of it, bitchy for a quarter of it,
horny for
and then
100% of it.
Pretty literally psychotic for the last half.
She's had a rough life. She was locked into a tomb and left there for a really long time. She's probably completely nuts now. Like, I feel like that, of anything else, makes her completely like understandable. Like,
you're on board with Mary?
Broken. Yeah. What? She's like, okay. Look, this is always the part where I have to go and start like vouching for the bad guy. And so here's where I'm going to do it here. It's not lizard people. It's Mary.
Okay.
And the thing is, think about this. Okay, so originally she's an alien. She's just like doing her alien business, floating around, whatever. She sees some people, Egyptians, and she's like, whoa, like, first of all, like, I think women are pitiable, like little weak bitches. Like, they shouldn't have to carry stones. First of all, I don't agree with that. I'm not saying Mary was like well led. She was just, she had a good intent.
Yeah, I really couldn't figure out which side she was on in the whole.
I was confused by it because it's like she wants to be like worshipped, but also she's like, y'all can't do the same thing as men. Sit down, little girl.
Right.
It was really strange. But like, okay, so again, I don't agree with that. But she had their interests good at heart, right? She wasn't trying to be evil. So her friends.
We should also. I'm sorry, Cassie. We should also mention that Mary's name at that point was Clarice.
Clarice.
Yes.
And literally every time I read that, all I could hear was a really badly lisping Anthony Hopkins.
Yes.
Saying, hello, Clarice.
Same.
Okay, so Clarice's
okay, good.
friend,
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
No.
Her alien buddies are like, no, just leave those people alone. They're carrying rocks and they're doing their own business. Like, this is not to do with us. And she's like, hello, I'm Clarice. Absolutely fucking not. I've got to end this. So she steps off her spaceship and she's down on the earth. And they're like,
and she goes from fourth density to third density.
Yes, right, whatever that is. And she looks weird. And they're like, we don't like this. So she sees the prettiest one from her like perspective. And she's like, you, here. And then she morphs into that one. Yeah, she does like Mystique level, like cool switching abilities. And then bam, now she's also hot. So then they're like, whoa, she's also hot. But then she's like, watch this. She becomes even hotter. Like, first of all, these people's minds are blown now. And she's having fun. Because
shape-shifting alien materialized out of nowhere.
Yes. How cool, right? Like,
yeah, totally.
They don't have a lot of else going on. They're like, building pyramids and, burying their loved ones with things and stuff.
With
like,
cats.
Yeah, and writing like those hieroglyphics. So they're doing their own thing, but still, they've never seen anything like this. They're like, what the, And so she's like, yeah, haha, this is great and this is fun. Well, then she decides to like hang out for a while, as you do when you're in that situation, I'm assuming. And her friend starts getting jealous because, again, she's a fucking magical alien and her friend is not. So her friend starts getting a little bit salty.
Well, her friend also realized that she chose that form and then morphed into a sexier form.
Yeah, well, obviously she's not the prettiest and she knows it, and now she's been faced with it by an alien. So she's like, she doesn't like this.
It's like, okay, you're not as awesome as I could be. So
I think there was some gay stuff going on. So I think she actually like wanted to be with her, and also she was like, make me a magical alien too. And she's like, I'll be with you and we can do stuff, but I'm not going to make you a magical alien. And she didn't like that, understandably, because you want both worlds. Like, you want to get the stuff and you want to be a magical alien. So when she didn't get her way, she saw she was also given the same stuff to the other dude, and she did not like that because she's very jealous. So then she went wild, like basically tortures and rips open rib by rib, Cold One style, to like this guy screams right in front of the person that loves him. So she's like going mentally wild now because of this terrible torture. Then they put her with his body and his blood. How grotesque. He's rotting because he's just a basic person in this little box and bury her with it for who knows how long, because they don't really specify, and they also don't really clearly specify how she gets out. So I'm really unclear about that. But then suddenly cut to, she's in high school. Nuts. I think it makes total sense. Honestly, like I'm on board.
Unhinged.
Yeah, absolutely
unhinged.
Justifiably unhinged. Yes.
Okay, that's fair, Cassie. And I would totally buy that if she was human in the first place.
Well, she got confused somewhere.
But
in the
she's
box,
supposed to be this above it all being who knows the secret to everything is just love.
Is it though? Because the love got her in the box.
Well, I have no idea, honestly. That's what she says. That's the secret to eternal life.
And that's what Tom tells her too. Tom says that a lot. He's like, "No, you gotta love." Does. Yeah, he's like a Beatles song or something. He's just over here singing and playing his guitar, and she's like, "My fucking love is dead. He's dead again in another life. This is bullshit." I would be mad too, honestly.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. So she goes to this party and isn't merely drunk. She is stoned, according to the text here. While Savy is singing "Don't Stand Too Close to Me" from the police to her for some reason.
Which is the exact opposite of what he wants.
Exact opposite of what he wants.
Well, that's like in that same scene, I believe, when they're like heavy petting and stuff, and he's like, "Please, could you turn over? I need to kiss you." And she says, "No."
Oh no, yeah, that's later, but that's later, yeah. But
ridiculous.
Yeah. In the meantime, Ken shows up and feels like his brother is still here watching them. Which doesn't make sense because his brother is not an immortal alien.
No, he is not.
So unless Ken can sense Tom for some reason,
he can. Claxton or Claxto or Clotar. Well, sorry, yeah,
Claxton.
That's it. That's the one. Wasn't there a movie Paxton? Was that a movie? Or
K-Pax.
Okay. Bill Paxton is a person, but yeah.
Bill Paxton is a person.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I confused those two things.
K-Pax is a bad movie with Kevin Spacey.
Okay.
Yeah. Who the less said about the better.
Yeah. We can just.
So they decide to have a seance, like you do in a Pike book. And we get a little bit of a background on the relationship between Mary and Jerry. And it's only now that I realize we have a Tom and Jerry in this book.
Oh.
As well as rhyming Mary and Jerry, which always irritates me when there are rhymes like that in names. But that's just like my thing.
Jack and Jill. Well, that doesn't rhyme, but it just sounds good together.
No, you're right. So she was writing a story about an Egyptian goddess who was thrown into a tomb. But she couldn't figure out the way to liberate the young goddess from the tomb without getting ridiculous. You see Pike putting into his text that he could not figure out a way to make this story work without getting ridiculous.
Do they ever solidly explain how she gets out?
No.
No, okay. It wasn't just something I missed. Like, that is not explained. It's just
she literally gets out by turning into mist because she can do that in Idaho instead of in Egypt.
What?
And then possessing sort of or conceiving a baby in Mary's mother. Because it's a little ambiguous whether or not Mary's mother was pregnant.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah, it was a real weird, like, is this a Children of the Damned kind of situation with still aliens? Or
is it just weirder?
So then is her body and okay, because she changed to Miss, their bodies are still entombed in Egypt.
I think so.
Am I to understand? Okay. Like her physical. Okay.
I mean, that's what I understand.
And her alien BFF was just there on Earth in his spaceship, waiting this entire time.
Watching the entire time and doing nothing.
Maybe I'll go down and get her out of the tomb.
Like I could have visited her and reminded her how to change back into fourth density and we could go home.
Instead, let me also enroll in high school. This has like Twilight energy parts of this.
And did he just create a full-blown human? The way...
I assume he just morphed into it like she did back in Egypt.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so they're in the library. They're messing with a Ouija board. And again, Pike is so convinced that if he points out how ludicrous this story is, we won't realize it. A suicidal girlfriend, a depressed brother, a wannabe rock star, an oversexed cheerleader, and 2 brain-dead sisters. These were not going to penetrate the greatest mystery of all time. Just because you point it out, Pike, does not mean it's okay.
He thinks he's being like fourth wall breaking and like clever, but I don't think those points are. I'm just like, that's not. I don't like that this is happening.
No. There's this term, hang a lampshade on it, where if you have something that the audience is going to notice anyway, you may as well draw their attention to it. But you can't make that the entire book. When the audience notices this story doesn't make any sense, just pointing out that the story doesn't make any sense does not solve that problem. So I do enjoy Ouija board sessions. I enjoy these conversations, the crypticness of them. But yeah, Egypt, Idaho. It
was a real weird. Just this whole book is full of real weird choices.
Yeah,
like just
it's like he had a big pot and just picked stuff out of it at random.
Yes.
Like
like all folded up pieces of paper. Yeah. It's like, okay, this is where he's rolling dice. This is what we're doing this time. Ha ha!
Yeah, like I said, he just had a bunch of leftover post-it notes. Post-it notes is the word.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
I like post-it though.
Post-its, yeah, post-its.
You know, those things that are on my desk all over the place. Yeah, plenty of them. I get it, C. Pike, I get it. He's like, what do I have left over from literally every other book I've ever written? Ah, yes, 6 different notes. And then
I'll just fill in the gaps with recycled content from other books I've written.
He's like, everybody really liked this scene in this book, so I'll just put it back in there with just, different names. And
I'm surprised we didn't have a detective spend 12 hours in interrogating people.
Oh,
yeah,
Lord.
A detective or a cop I was expecting.
Yeah, none in this. Just the threat of.
Yes, just the threat of.
So we have Savy take Mary home, and
there it is. Yeah, that.
So Mary's still drunk, I think. So Savy convinces her to get partially naked, and then spends a lot of time working her ass.
Yeah, just massaging her butt. For
like, how rude too. What about the rest? Like the rest, like she's walking around and stuff. Like she didn't pull a muscle in her butt, my dude. Like how insensitive. Like, do you think that's going to put her in the mood? Like, come on.
Well, he does. He does think it's going to put her in the mood. Yes,
that is true. Savy does sound like a beautiful idiot for sure.
And he calls her a physical necessity.
Ugh.
Which, because of Community, I know is from 1984. And
that
makes me very uncomfortable. Yeah, and I wrote "ew" in the margin.
Want to barf a whole lot.
Yeah. So I have some content here that usually would get saved for the thirst section, but it's not particularly sexy. He was begging to have sex with her and yet seemed to be on the verge of tears. None of this was natural. None of this was meant to be. She couldn't say no to him, and she could not say yes. Build a fire, she said finally. Give me a massage. I'll take off my clothes. He hesitated. Should I take off my clothes? She shook her head. Not tonight.
She's like, no, you can keep that all over there. I don't need
Yeah,
that.
like,
yeah, I don't want to see that. I don't know. Nobody needs that.
Hard
Oh.
pass.
And then Mary wore only a towel. As she lay down, it still covered her butt. But Savy had found some scented oil.
Oh.
Savy had found in her house some scented oil.
Yeah, I'll bet he did.
And as he began to work it into her back, the towel slipped to the side and she lay exposed. She didn't care. She liked having her butt rubbed and other things. That's literally a sentence. She liked having her butt rubbed, comma, and other things.
Yeah.
Still, she would not have intercourse.
About his shitty massage.
Yeah. She feared if she did, a portion of the poison in her soul would enter Savy's, and he would know no comfort at all. That, again, is a lovely line in the middle of junk.
Yeah.
They feel so out of place.
Yeah. And it's just upsetting.
It is. It gets...
This whole scene is upsetting, and he calls her an Egyptian goddess.
Oh, that's right, he did. He did.
So, Savy goes home, thank God.
Yeah, because she told him they can't make love because,
right.
To quote Mary herself, because I have no love, we'll make nothing and we'll end up feeling worse than before.
Yes.
Which, I mean, that's a pretty good
I'm not sure that's how
point.
that always works, though.
But yeah.
That's not. But it is important enough that we are literally repeating that line later in the book.
I thought that was like also to show that he was there watching them like a creep.
Which also is creepy. You're right.
Yeah.
I took it as he knew her, but you're right. It is he was there watching her.
He's always watching her.
He's been watching her this whole time. Yeah.
Ew.
It is so creepy. I don't feel bad when she like lets him go.
And there was a point when Mary was just a regular girl, right?
It felt like that's how it started. She just was
like she didn't have any idea she was an ancient alien until much later. So that means Tom, or Clackstor, was just hanging out watching this teenage girl from his spaceship.
As she banged her boyfriend, Jerry.
Which she's sort of trying to do again when she goes in only a robe to the Seedmont Memorial Meadows.
Yeah, that
where
bummed me
she
out.
lies down on the grave. And then we have the flashback. Again, there's always a flashback. And what a flashback it is.
Oh, yeah.
She and Jerry are having sex. And in the middle of it, she wonders if she was voted homecoming queen. And he says, why don't we break into the office and count the votes? This is stupid.
Clearly.
Right?
The sex couldn't have been that great if that's where her mind wandered to.
Yet it is the greatest thing ever in the world for her. Like they did it 12 times a week, they point out. Sometimes 13.
Oh, boy.
What a weird way to count that.
I know, right?
Weird.
It may as well have said a baker's dozen for as comfortable as that sentence made me.
I just imagine they just take Sundays off and then sometimes it's like...
Well, Sundays are for the Lord.
Yeah, right. So it's like 2 to 3 times a day on some of the other days.
Right.
And
Which doesn't sound
strict schedule.
out of the question for high schoolers.
For teenagers, no, absolutely.
Because she was 18, I think, in this book.
Mm-hmm.
Was she?
I think.
Are they? Oh, yeah, there are seniors.
Yeah,
okay.
They were seniors, and so I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right for horny teens who are literally flashbacks running on hormones. Like, yeah,
Yes, you're right.
the number seems accurate, but the description of it just was ick.
Yeah, he could have just been like 2 to 3 times a day instead of like
Right.
12 to 13 times per week. Like, okay.
Like,
Or
weirdo.
frequently. Who counts it by the week?
This
We're
is a
doing
math
math
problem
now?
I don't
Like,
want to
what the
do.
hell?
Like, this
Hey,
is right.
speaking of math, okay, they get in there and start counting the votes, and there's this sentence. They didn't need more than a quarter of the votes to see that over 2/3 of the student body loved her, and that only 10% had thought Pamela was decent in bed.
What?
That's like one of those logic problems I used to do in school, where you have the grid and you got to figure out, okay, if Pamela has 10% of the people who like her in bed, who voted for?
Exactly. Just horrific word problems. It's like a math word problem in a riddle. And I'm like, I don't want to solve this. I don't care about this. Just tell me how many votes. Like, be like, I needed this many votes to win, and it was a landslide. Look, I fixed it. And you don't have to throw in like fractions. Why? Fractions?
No.
Fractions
yeah,
and percentages in the same sentence.
Look,
Absolutely
I stopped
not.
doing
No,
math
thank you.
a long time ago. Like, my brain physically shut off learning fractions in fourth
I have a
grade,
calculator now,
and I just
love
did
my
not pick it up
calculator.
ever again. I'm like, nope, I don't need to know this.
Okay, but so the important part is not that she's homecoming queen, though that seems to be her most important part.
Yeah.
But a security guard comes in, pulls his gun, pokes Mary in the belly very hard enough for her to double over in pain, shoots Jerry in the arm,
Yeah.
and then literally the sentence is, Mary went nuts, totally. So
yeah, she did.
she jumps this guard. Jerry gets shot in the head.
Yeah, if she'd kept her cool, like,
Yeah.
none of this would have happened, and we wouldn't have had to read this book.
If she kept her cool, you could have sued that guard
Yeah.
who poked you in the stomach with a loaded gun.
Yeah, and accidentally shot your boyfriend in the arm. Like, okay.
God.
But good lord, guys.
And then, so Mary turns the gun in his hand on the guard and shoots him in the head.
The physics of that.
Yeah. And that's where we see Jerry die, and we get this line that immediately threw me completely off. Clarice, he whispered, the Akasha burns, the sacrifice begins. All right.
Okay. Just okay.
So, Mary pretends she wasn't there. She's crowned homecoming queen, and we're back to her laying on top of this grave and really creepily wanting to be with him again. Like she has to be told. It was as if those damn undertakers didn't trust the nation of bereaved sweethearts, didn't believe those left behind would willingly consent to keep their hands off the freshly dead. And then
I say this on my podcast, unfortunately, a lot. But necrophilia is never great. Necrophilia is never great. Mary, I need you to realize.
We get this sentence here. She hadn't given him a proper goodbye.
Blah.
He deserved that, at least, to feel her fingers on his lips one last time.
Man,
Her tongue on his brow. What even is that?
that's the least
Who's
sexiest
licking
thing I've
that?
ever heard.
Please
Yeah.
don't lick my brow. Yeah.
He deserved that at least. And this is not a mistake.
No.
This
Smearing her
is-
eyebrows and shit.
This is probably the first moment where I was just like, what the fuck? And I started posting my highlights on Twitter because literally I was perplexed as hell
Yeah.
by some of these turns of phrase in here. Not not necessarily bad, just what the fuck?
Baffling.
For instance, this 3-sentence triptych here. There was a flying saucer in the sky. New paragraph. A big fat white one. New paragraph. Oh shit, she whispered. Like, I've read a lot of alien books. I've read a lot of Pike alien books. I've never seen that before. I've never seen someone react that way. That's a big fat white UFO in the sky.
Yeah, it was a real weird, sudden addition. Be like, oh, by the way, did you know that this book was about aliens? You did not, because we did not give you any hint on the back of the book. Surprise. Aliens.
And not only aliens, but traditional gray aliens.
Yeah, which I love when she calls one of them the little guy.
Yeah, right.
Like, I don't know why. It just tickled me to no end. I'm like, the little guy.
So she winds up back at home, transported, and she sees the alien. She goes back to the grave in a smaller robe now because the other one was all dirty. Mm-hmm. And then so twice she goes to the grave, and now she's at home naked, and the alien's back outside her window.
Just chilling.
Watching
her. The little guy. I did like it was either the first time or the second time after she had gone to lay atop Jerry's grave like a completely sane and rational human person.
Yes, you emphasize the word lay very interestingly there. Like you're implying something almost.
Yes, 100% convinced that she absolutely was trying some shenanigans while there.
Indeed.
But she comes back and she was talking, like, I think she was going to take a shower because she was, covered in dirt and mud from, I'm going to assume, writhing on this
writhing.
grave.
There was definite writhing. In fact, I seem to remember the word writhing.
Yeah. And she said there was
So.
dirt on her aura that she had to wash away, but water wasn't strong enough. She needed an exorcism. And I was like, yeah, I love that. I hate why you said it, but I do love the way you said it. Yeah. And I'm like,
I think this book is full of things like that, where it's like, well, that's great. Can we put it in another book?
Yeah. Do we have to do it in this one? Because I don't want it. I don't want it.
Don't want.
Do not.
So then she calls Ken and Savy over to have another seance. Great.
Yeah, everybody was so into it the first time. Let's do it again in the middle of the night, please.
Yeah, now she wants to talk to the guy in the spaceship.
Yeah.
Okay, so we learn what Akasha means because Ken is smart. It means space or ether. It's often used when referring to the Akashic records, which are the supposedly imperishable records of everything that's ever happened in the universe.
Yep.
All right.
You can pay someone to read your Akashic records if they've got that knowledge and skill.
Can you? Is that a thing?
It is a thing.
Oh.
If you're into astrology.
If you're on that page, yeah.
Yep. If you're into astrology, there are people out there that read Akashic records, or somehow. I think it's like a past life regression type situation. I think I've never looked into having it done, but I do know that it is a thing that you can have somebody do for you.
Well, I mean, it's unfortunately not important to the story at
really
all.
Isn't.
Despite seeming like it might be important, it's not.
Being one of Jerry's last words.
Yeah, right.
Nope, no matter. Inconsequential.
So then she goes for a walk in the woods and runs into the alien again. Just hanging out. Where she and Jerry used to have sex.
Probably because he was watching them there have sex, and that's her little friend Tom.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Creepy, creepy, creepy.
Now, I do like this little aside here that sort of toes the line between blaming alien reports on repressed abuse from parents.
Yes.
The cause of half the childhood abuse problems in the nation, according to some experts. Nasty buggers with their anal probes and lousy bedside manners.
Yes.
I take that as they're not true. But I'm not sure which side Pike's on there. Honestly.
Hard to tell from this book particularly.
Yes, that's very true. She's chased by a bear randomly.
Kind of.
Maybe,
Then-
possibly.
Yeah, you're right. But then wolves, and then bats, and then vampiric birds.
Okay.
She could tell by the dryness of their acidic saliva as it dripped into her hair. I don't know what dry saliva is like.
I don't either.
And later in the book, we talk about how you don't have fluids, so you can't cry. So I assume you also can't have saliva?
Especially not dry acidic saliva.
Dry acidic
dripping.
saliva. Yeah.
How does it drip if it's dry?
It can't.
Word
Drip
salad.
Can't.
Word salad on this one.
So she touches the alien, and that's where we learn all about Clarice and Claxtor going to visit the Egyptians and blah, 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 blah. Oh my God, why is it 11 pages long?
So long.
This story clearly can be summed up in 2 paragraphs because it sounds just as ridiculous when it's 11 pages long as it does when Mary explains it to Pamela.
Yeah, whom, by the way, she's like, here's a really long preamble as to why I'm about to drain you of all your blood.
Right.
I am definitely over the edge at this point. I am completely unhinged. So let me do one of those like movie style, like you're going to be saved. Like you're not
Bit of
going to die
monologue here.
because
Yeah.
I'm talking too much. You'll
Yeah.
be fine, but it's going to hurt a little bit first.
Now, Cassie, as a fan of the monologue, or as a fan of these old flashback stories, did this do anything for you?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mind it as much as you did just because it felt super pikey, and a lot of it I was just like laughing, like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah,
There was
there's
just
that.
so many times. Yeah, like I would stop and laugh, and like my boyfriend was near me while I was reading, and he's like, what? And I would read him a chunk, and he's like, what the fuck? And I'm like, no, reading it would not help you understand that anymore.
No.
Like that just is what it is.
You don't
That's
need
the thing.
context because
There's no actual context in this book.
yeah,
No,
it just
no.
is a vessel for no context.
Yeah, here's something. And if you'd like that, here's more.
Here's more something. It's a different something, but
And it
here's more
doesn't,
of
it doesn't connect, but you might like it.
And if you don't, here's something else. Here, we'll try again.
a little smorgasbord of things.
Yeah.
Just a little
So this is
buffet.
when Tom shows up at school, and Pamela wants him, and Mary wants him, and there's a confrontation where Pamela says, "You didn't sleep with him already, did you?" "It's none of your business if I did," Mary said flatly. "Oh, I didn't say that flatly. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's none of your business if I did." Pamela was livid. "You probably did, and turned him off the whole Seedmon female population. He probably left in disgust, thinking you were the best this town had to offer." "I am the best this town has to offer." What?
At 18, I really question the validity of that statement, Mary.
Yes,
Because I feel
also.
like your only boyfriend has been Jerry.
Yeah.
Like,
And even as a
been boning
goddess,
other people,
she
sure.
seemed to fuck one person, possibly two, if we go with Cassie's thought, and I am inclined to, because I like adding a queer reading.
Fair.
But I mean, how good? I mean, I guess the aliens could be exceptional at sex. I guess.
Maybe.
But Tom doesn't seem to be, because he doesn't. I don't know.
I don't either.
I don't know at all.
He seems a little bit more alien to me than Mary, but maybe that's because he's also never been human before.
That's true.
Which is literally something I'm thinking of right now, because, you know, he was like indifferent to a lot of stuff and really just trying to get her ass back on this ship.
Yeah, right.
I really don't
like, hey, come home. But here, I'm going to show you how I can reanimate a fox that just got run over.
Yeah.
So that you might think maybe I can reanimate your dead boyfriend, but I don't want to.
Right. He's like, I really don't want to do it, but I know you're going to ask me, why did you reanimate a fox in front of her? Because you knew.
Of course she's going to ask you for that. She's crazy.
She's lost all of her marbles. All 5,000 years worth of marbles are gone.
So she goes back to work and tells Mr. Barker some of this story. And she says she's telling him the whole story, but then talks about how much of the story she's leaving out. And that's probably for the best, because this story is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So Mr. Barker tells a similar story. How he, could see in those days, and went to the graveyard and saw a thing come out of the ground like a mist and move toward town. And he felt this ominous feeling like it was going to feed off of him. Like, this is actually interesting.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying I could have had a whole book about just that story alone.
Right. It doesn't connect at all with what we already know about this alien.
No.
And if she could rise from the grave at any time, which apparently she could.
Yeah.
Why didn't she in ancient Egypt?
Yeah, why wait so long? Why wait until 95?
Thousands of years and then go to Idaho?
Of all places.
Specifically for Mary.
Yeah.
Then Mary asks, this spot in the ground in the cemetery where the creature rose up, is it where Jerry was buried? Yes, it was the same spot. Okay, he's blind now. How would he know?
Thank you. That is a fantastic
Did he go
point.
to Jerry's funeral and stand there?
He's like, this is
Maybe?
just many places over here.
He doesn't seem like he was Jerry's best friend, so I don't know why he would.
Maybe because it's a small town, so everybody knows everybody and everybody would go.
I guess. Okay. And then here is the weirdest non sequitur. Our esteemed mayor, Mr. Patrick Poole, threw acid in my face.
Mm-hmm.
He added quietly, he caught me in bed with his wife. Mary was astounded. The acid was sitting there, ready? Mr. Barker nodded. I thought the same thing myself. The acid was awfully convenient, but maybe Poole had caught his wife in bed many times before.
I love that. Like, that's not the first time maybe the first time in that book, but it's not the only time in that book.
Yeah, he's probably thrown acid in other people's faces.
He's like, so convenient that acid was there. He's like, yeah, I know. But just like, I just love how he's like, yeah, this is absolutely ridiculous and I'm aware of it. So I'm going to write it to be like, yeah, like I don't want to explain it any further than this. So yeah. It's the same with Clarice and Clackstor, the names.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So
that up about
Clackstor says, you named me that.
Yeah.
But we don't follow up with that.
Exactly.
And
I love
just
that part.
because Mary gets progressively more irritated with the name Clackstor doesn't mean I'm less irritated with the name Clackstor.
Where did you?
Which is a stupid fucking name.
At least mine has a nice ring to it. You sound like a reject robot from a bad sci-fi film. He smiled sadly. You gave it to me.
Yeah, what is that?
Right? I'm just like, Christopher Pike, I really appreciate what you're doing in this moment where you're like, yeah, I know this name is dumb, but I picked it and now I have to stick with it.
And I'm going with it.
Like, yeah, it does sound like a reject robot from a bad sci-fi film. I know, fully aware, but here we are. You've only got a handful of pages left in this book. Come on, see you through to the end.
And we're going to take the last handful of pages in this book before the epilogue, which is its own thing.
Oh, boy.
And have Mary just get demented in her obsession with bringing Jerry back from the dead without any concern about consequences. Like, never in high school did she read The Monkey's Paw.
Right. I was like, oh, no. Because this book, I mean, for all of the things that lead up to that point, there's a lot of stuff, but not a lot of stuff, if that makes sense. Like, there's a lot of
totally
happening, but also nothing is happening. And then all of a sudden it just ramps up to suddenly she's like, Tom, you're an alien. I'm an alien. Bring back my boyfriend from the dead. And he's like, oh, but also, yeah, okay.
I don't want to do that. And you don't want me to do that. So let's not do that. Okay.
But here I go doing it.
It's funny because this section here feels like an old EC Comics, the Tales from the Crypt stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of thing that happens in those. Yeah, bring my boyfriend back from the dead. You really don't want me to bring your boyfriend back from the dead? Yes, I do.
I do, though.
Okay, are you sure? It's and so it's actually
it's the
interesting
of be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, right. And instead, we throw shit in like, yeah, I've had a few weird dreams. I've talked to a spirit on the Ouija board and seen a flying saucer or two. So what? It's all hallucinations. But bring Jerry back to life.
None of this is real, but you can 100% reanimate a corpse.
Yeah.
By loving it, I think. Is how that by giving it love.
And here are, like, again, Pike just keeps reinforcing how dumb this is. I think right now you're wearing a vulnerable third density body. If I pull this trigger and a bullet goes into your head, I don't think you'll be warping your starship back to Starfleet Academy anytime soon. And then, look, I know in another life we must have been friends. Maybe we were even lovers. I'm sure you love me. I believe that. But in this life, I don't know you. You're just some weird creature from Planet X that can fix my dead boyfriend. These are actually lines of dialogue in this book.
Yep.
This is actually lines of dialogue.
This is really real. Those are words that are in that book.
That name, Claxter, continued to annoy her. How did she ever fly all over the galaxy with a guy with such an annoying name? Yeah, that's the problem.
Yes. Yes. That's the number one issue of this book. And of Mary's.
Good God. She gets mad because Tom can't dig up Jerry fast enough and says, don't you have a Stairmaster aboard your spaceship?
Oh, Jesus, take the wheel.
But
I forgot that was the thing she said.
But in the midst of all this, we do have this creepy little EC Comics story because he is literally bringing back from the dead someone who's been dead, autopsied, embalmed for a month and buried for a month.
30 days dead, 30 days buried. All bad.
And when we really get into it, it's really interesting. Like, she's obsessed with the dirt on his suit and thinks about how she'll have to take it to the cleaners. That's demented.
Yeah.
And that is a great example of a demented, untrustworthy narrator.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there is brilliance in here. Like, the only other little problem was that Jerry's eyes had sunk back into his head, like liquid marbles squished by the heel of a hard boot.
Yuck.
The dead did not rest easily. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Like
And
this could have easily been like 4 different books.
Yeah. And one of them was good.
Yeah. Exactly.
The other 3 should have been put back in the trunk.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if the Mr. Barker, that would have been a great book on its own. And the story with Mary resurrecting Jerry, I feel like could have been part of that, but if it were its own thing, it would have been better than adding in the other storylines that didn't really serve too much of a purpose. Like they shouldn't have, but they did, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is very unfortunate.
A lot happens, but also nothing happens.
And we get another really great description in here. As he had warned, there was a vibration in the air, yet it was swifter than mere human heartbeats, oscillating at the upper band of hearing. A sine wave beamed to the cemetery from a dimension devoid of order, where there were no judgments and no morality. That's
good.
Great.
So
it was not good or bad. It was simply inhuman.
I like that a lot too.
And then Jerry awakes and is horrified and is in pain.
Oh, I really did enjoy how that was described. Like, no, it's not gonna, like, this is a consequence. And it's a really big one. And he's literally here, but what kind of existence is this going to be for poor Jerry? Not great.
Yeah, right.
He's just the whole time he is alive, which is not at all long, and felt
it's not
pointless to have it happen, because it was like a few hours, I think. But it was just like, I am literally nothing but pain.
Yeah.
I exist to be in pain, and I was happy before you brought me back.
And she promises him morphine or aspirin.
Yeah.
And then sex. Well, we can have sex, or we can wait and have sex later, but sex. He wept then, and she could never have imagined how horrible it was to see a corpse cry, because his entire head was so dehydrated he had no moisture to shed tears, but his mossy cheeks creased as he sobbed and his teeth chattered together.
Ghoulish.
Really, really ghoulish and horrible and amazing.
Yes. Again, it should have been that whole situation needed to be in a completely different book.
Yeah. And she gets him home. She points out that she can see her brains through his head hole.
Yep.
And then realizes, I've got to get him blood. Fresh blood. Pamela's blood. And here's where the stupid ass homecoming queen thing comes back. Because the way she coerces Pamela over, and Pamela, by the way, is still suspicious that she may have something to do with Jerry's death. Or at least have murdered the guard, which she did. But says, hey, I have ballots that say you're homecoming queen. Would you like them? And that's important enough for Pamela to meet her, get at the theater, which is weird, get knocked out with a hammer, brought to the garage to be drained of her blood 1 liter at a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. Like, I know that they're, well, I know now because I forgot, but that they are in a very small town in Idaho, so I guess homecoming queen is like so very important.
It could be the most important thing in
that
world.
In that time.
In their world.
I've never had that kind of experience when I was in high school, where homecoming queen was like, because it's homecoming. Nobody really cared about homecoming. It was all about prom. Who was the prom queen, the prom court? But like homecoming, people are like, no, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, just at least in Portland, where I am from, it was not a huge thing. But
I mean, it was the 80s. No, it wasn't. It was the
95.
90s.
So, I mean, I can kind of see that being like a small town Idaho 1995 thing for high schoolers. Sure. But it still felt real dumb. It felt real dumb.
So here's where we find out that Jerry's heart has been cut out.
Yep.
And he may be missing other organs as well. And he's just begging to let him go. Like, I was happy in other space, possibly heaven. I don't know. And you brought me back, and now everything hurts. Everything completely hurts. It's horrible. I hate you.
Yeah, my existence is nothing but pain.
Yeah.
You monster.
So Mary decides that she's going to let him die. So we go back to the cemetery. But before leaving the house, she called the hospital to come for Pamela. Bring plenty of blood, she told them.
Well, that's not at all a terrifying phone call to receive at a hospital. Just imagine, like, working the front desk at whatever hospital exists in this small town. It's just some frantic, unhinged teenager being like, hey, you need to go pick up the mayor's daughter. She needs a lot of blood, by the way. Hopefully you have a whole bunch of bags of it just hanging around.
Bring plenty of blood.
Just...
That's going to be the title of the episode. Bring plenty of blood. Because that's brilliant right there.
Oh.
Never in the history of the world has, bring plenty of blood.
Right? It's just like, is this a joke?
Yeah.
But no, 'twas not.
So we find Tom sitting at the edge of the grave, sulking and dying, kinda.
Maybe.
I don't know why I see Mr. Poopy Butthole from Rick and Morty in this role, but I do. Swinging his little feet in the grave. Ooh-wee.
Yeah, just chilling at the edge of that grave. I'm like, Tomothy.
And then so after all this bullshit, Mary takes out her hidden pistol and shoots Jerry in the head. Thankfully, he dies, although I think it would have been awesome if he didn't.
Yeah.
And it was just
corpse? It's already dead.
Even more horrible. But no, that's enough to get rid of him. And then here's where we're supposed to think, oh, okay, Mary is redeemed because she gives Tom her life force. So he can go back to the spaceship and she will stay in the tomb with the rust dust of her ex-lover.
Again,
yeah. Only theoretically to rise again at some point and maybe be in another small town in middle America. Maybe Kansas. I don't know.
Just do it all over again, but maybe do it differently next time? But wait.
But wait, indeed. And if the book had ended there, which it almost does.
Yeah.
So close.
I'd probably give it a whole extra star.
Really? So the end part really took that much off for you?
Yes. I was furious by this.
I'm sorry.
So the epilogue is the exact same scene from when they have the Ouija board at the party. Like, literally the exact same scene, the same text, except this time it's Jerry instead of Mary for some reason that the book doesn't want to tell us.
Yep.
So we go through this entire scene again, which was fine the first time, but this time it's Jerry, and that's all that's different.
Yep.
And then we get one little extra bit where Jerry is sitting beside her grave, wishing he was in the Black Tomb with her.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm like, what purpose did this serve? You just undid all of the painful things I just had to endure by reading the rest of this book.
But did he?
I don't know. And that is...
Like, it's you know, he has books where it's an endless circle, and that's fine, because that's what the story is.
Yeah. But you can't throw it in at the last second of another book. Like, there's got to be some more, or at least a hint that is coming. There was.
Because unless the idea, and this is possible, I just thought of this, the idea is by returning to the tomb, Clarice is going back and not creating possessing Mary.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mary just had a normal life and then died when they went for whatever reason. Oh, yeah, not just the seance, not just the fucking seance, but the scene where they're in the school looking at the ballots. Also, we also get that again, except this time Mary dies.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I
fucking hate it.
It was a really unnecessary addition.
Yeah.
It just, unless it was like explicitly stated somehow somewhere else that by choosing to go back into the tomb, she would, do everything and bring Jerry back to life for real, where he wouldn't have ever been a corpse and in eternal
and
pain.
all it would have taken is Claxton / Tom saying, if you choose this, it'll undo everything.
Yeah, if you do this, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
You won't be allowed to be with him, but he'll be alive and he'll be happy and he'll be okay. Like that, even just a tiny addition like of that explanation would have made it much, like, leave the fact ambiguous until the epilogue when you're like, oh, so she did decide to do that.
Right.
But then it's just like, surprise, here's this random thing that I decided to add for no good reason at all.
Instead, Pike treats his epilogue like the worst of Marvel's post-credit sequences. It's like epilogues, the book is the book. The epilogue is supposed to be addition. Like, if this is important to the book, it should be in the book, not in the epilogue.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's take a break so I can calm down. And we'll be right back and talk about some other things with this book. Yeah, we'll be back. More of the PikeCast. Wow, friends. Where else can you get this kind of programming than the PikeCast? Nowhere, that's where. But we're trying to keep the lights on here. If you like what you're hearing and want it to keep happening, jump over to our Patreon at thepikecast.com/Patreon and throw us a few bucks to join our private Discord server. Higher tiers get books, stickers, bookmarks, and even personalized shirts. That's thepikecast.com/Patreon.
Once, Osgood and Frost were the up-and-coming stars of the burgeoning paranormal investigation TV show craze before a hoax put an end to their friendship, partnership, and television careers. Now, over a decade later, Prudence Osgood is a barely functioning alcoholic ghost hunter for hire. Her yearning for mystery and adventure is reignited when she receives a cryptic, untraceable email. She can't resist embarking on an investigation that tugs threads, winding through a sinister series of disappearances, her former partner's family, and a night 20 years ago when a semi blew a yellow light and nearly killed her. Reviewers are calling Osgood Is Gone a masterfully vulnerable and relatable 21st century horror story, and a bourbon-soaked supernatural mystery with sparkling dialogue that sticks the landing on LGBT characters, and main character Prudence Osgood, as tortured as she is clever, broken in all the best ways, and a true heroine for our times. Buy it today at Osgood Is Gone as a paperback, ebook, or audiobook narrated by me, JJ Ronvier.
Welcome back to the PikeCast. Now we move into the Eternal Enemy, which is usually where we discuss the antagonist or overall enemy of the book. It's Mary. The protagonist is also the antagonist, right?
Yeah. Yeah, she was her own worst enemy.
Yeah.
That's true.
Ancient history.
And Pamela's worst enemy.
Yes. I was going to say, ancient history aside with fairies, Pamela, Mary is still her own worst enemy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that's all we need with the Eternal Enemy, right? Let's move into Thirst, which, as I said, I did pull some quotes out earlier. I do have some, but I always will defer. Do either of you have any sexy quotes?
I do not.
Okay.
I mean, no. No.
I mean, I can't promise they're sexy, but they're at least sex. And, you know, when we were reading this as young teens, it was cute and exciting.
Right. And then reflecting, you're like, oh, no.
Yeah.
No sexy. There's nothing. I mean, there's parts where, obviously it's like trying to be sensual, but it just made me shrivel up a lot. I'm
well,
like,
this first one here is while Mary's talking to her parents, apparently, Mary plucked out a tight black T-top that showed off her breasts. Just, there we go.
Yeah, it felt like there was a lot of horniness going on since it is a book about teenagers, which again, flashbacks full of hormones, the end. But it was just, it all came off wrong.
Yeah, skeevier than normal.
Yeah, like, I don't know what it is as a whole, but it was just like,
Yeah, I'm not comfortable.
I don't like it.
So we have the fact that, you know, Jerry, one of the greatest sculptors of all time, apparently.
Oh, that's right.
Can't handle his subject being nude because then he just wants to bone her. You know?
Jerry.
Like, seriously, if you're a sculptor and you're good, you've probably done nudes. And if you can't, you know, maybe you're not going to have that 13th sex this week. Maybe you should just finish your sculpture.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I totally forgot that was a thing about Jerry.
Yep.
In his life.
And he sculpts apparently in the woods.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That seems like a pain in the ass.
Well, and later, you know, to bring up pain in the ass, they made love in the trees. And Mary got several needles stuck in her ass, but it was fun having Jerry pull them out.
Oh. I think I forgot about that because I hated it so much while reading it. And I just chose to pretend that did not happen. It did, though. It did, though.
Yeah. And then we have her with Tom. 10 minutes at the outside, and they were both naked and rolling on the carpet on the floor in front of the fire. He had an awesome body. Again, not reflecting what we know from the back of the book. Better than Jerry's, twice as good as Savvy's, what she had seen of it, even better than her own. Literally, she's with this guy and she's thinking about, his body's even better than mine. I'm pretty awesome, but his is even better. Fuck her. Fuck her.
Mary, you are the worst.
The worst.
She's the worst.
Well, let's move into Die Softly, where we talk about moralizing and problematic elements in the writing and plot. I mean, really, there's just a lot of slut shaming.
Yeah.
Right?
Unnecessary.
And it's all directed at poor Pamela here. And I mean, though her father is the kind of guy that throws acid in the face of people,
Yeah.
but we do have this exchange between Mary and Pamela. I'm sorry, I made up that thing about another set of ballots. I just wanted to get you out of your house so I could hit you over the head with my hammer. I was voted queen by a landslide. What's really incredible is that most of the guys you slept with voted against you. Really, you must be dreadful in the sack. I'm not trying to be insulting. I tell you this as a friend. One girl to another. In your next life, Pammy, try to work on that. Like, that's actually, it could be fun if the book was fun. But it's not. So it's just rough and bad.
Yeah.
Just rough and bad. Just like their sex. Huh?
Hey.
Hey, anyone else have any moralizing and problematic? And the fact that the book is bad is not problematic, so we can't go there.
No? I don't. No? Okay. It's just, again, like, there's a difference between teenage girls being catty because, one of them is now dating the other one's ex-boyfriend. Sure, cattiness, fighting, but it felt kind like the slut-shamey situation.
It was a lot.
Yeah, I'm like, well, that's not great. Like, these are both because usually in other Christopher Pike books, like, girls are like, I like to have sex, and everybody's like, great, me too, no big deal, whatever.
Yeah, right.
And then for some reason in this one, it decided to be like, well, you had sex with this guy, and that makes you a big old slut. And it's like, well, you had sex with him too, so
what are we gonna do here?
Be like, I don't understand why this is happening. I feel like that's my overarching feeling about the whole book is I don't
understand why this is happening.
I don't understand why it's happening.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. Let's move to Season of Passage, where we talk about the best and worst writing and Pikeisms. The most obvious Pikeism is the fact that her parents are randomly going away for a week.
Yes.
Because none of this could have happened if her parents were still at home.
Absolutely not. Could you imagine? I mean, I wish they had been, though, because that would have been at least
a whole new level to
bringing home.
It really would have been
Jerry's reanimated corpse, like trying to explain that to her parents.
I would like that book. That would be fun.
That's why it should have been its own thing. But yeah, parents not being around is absolutely a hallmark.
Yeah. Then we have the seance, we have the ancient goddess, we have aliens, though, again, this is unique in Pike's work because they're literal gray aliens.
Yep.
So, I mean, I don't remember when Communion came out, but I think it was the beginning of the 90s.
Ooh, that is a good point. I don't know. I have a copy of it in the other room.
I know that's when I became aware of Communion.
Mm-hmm.
And that really cemented the gray aliens in popular culture, I'd say. I know Fire in the Sky came out right around this time, and that
Yep.
still remains like the most terrifying PG-13 movie I've ever seen.
I have met Travis Walton.
Well,
I have had dinner next to Travis Walton, and
wow.
I can tell you right now that the whole time I was just like, please, dear aliens, if you come back, don't just take him with you. Just take him back. I don't need to go, please, because absolutely something happened to that man without question.
If I recall the Walton Experience book versus the Fire in the Sky movie, the Walton Experience book was far more pleasant with his interactions with the aliens than the Fire in the Sky movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a whole other podcast right there.
It's my podcast.
It's your podcast. I'd love to come on and talk about that with you.
Please.
Yes.
So I just have the Pikeisms you skipped, which are that they ate burgers at Denny's, and also the milk, which is disgusting.
Right. They went to Denny's. I forgot about that. And the milk. Tom has milk, doesn't he?
All he orders is a glass of milk until she does something else.
Milk.
It's disgusting. What kind of alien comes to Earth and is like, yes, please, I'd like a glass of milk? Ew. Why? That's not even a thing. Like, I'm never going to get over it. It shouldn't happen so often.
It is. Is it more or less upsetting than the rest of the stuff in this book for you?
More upsetting because people shouldn't even be drinking this much milk. What kind of alien's going to come here and order milk to drink? Like that. He's just been watching people all this time for 5,000 years, like lusting after this entombed woman without helping her. And he's like, yeah, the first thing I think I'm going to do is get some milk when I go and also go to high school.
Get a glass of milk. Yeah.
I can't. No, that was very upsetting to me.
I do have some good quotes from here. And, we've picked out some good stuff. And really, in the worst of Pike, there's always some good stuff. As Savy predicted, the party died a natural death. Considering what comes later in the book, I think that's a lovely little turn of phrase. Mary wondered if creativity was one of humanity's ways of dealing with the darkness that was destined to follow even the most brilliant life. Draw or mold an image of beauty before your limbs stopped moving, before they ceased twitching. Maybe the beauty would outlast the decay. Wouldn't it be nice if some of Jerry's sculptures survived and it was actually important that those lines were in the book? Because they're great lines.
Yeah.
But they're not relevant. This I enjoyed. Pamela did not take her advice about holding still, but since Mary had already tied her wrists to the arms of the chair, the cheerleader's lack of cooperation was academic. It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
And then there's this bizarre, evocative paragraph. Suddenly she knew things. For example, she intuited a point in space, far beyond the borders of the universe, where the galaxies collided and new dimensions were born in the centers of black holes. Here, all relative matter was crushed. It was a cauldron of destruction and a wellspring of creation. She actually saw this place, even as she stood in the dark cemetery, and felt its importance in the overall scheme of things. It was alien to her limited human mind, and yet it was the most poignant of all spots. Just the memory of the cosmic womb filled her with overpowering nostalgia. It was so far away. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So then we move on. I've got some weird. I mean, not that most of this book isn't weird. Voices in the nighttime woods didn't scare her. Even the voice of the devil couldn't, unless he told her that Jerry had gone to hell while she was destined for heaven. That's not really weird. I don't know why that's in my weird section. This is weird. She was already out on a limb. Did it really matter if she invited a family of gorillas to shake the branch for her? She was bound to fall anyway.
Why?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. She had to wonder if Jerry's digestive system really worked. To be frank, he hadn't been to the toilet in a long time. Yep, that's that.
Oh, this book is...
And then when she's talking to Tom about all the stuff that happened, he was shot in the head by a security guard at school. What's ironic is that the guard committed suicide immediately afterward. Don't you think that's strange? And then Tom responds with, "You must miss him very much." It's like they're speaking two different languages. I mean, but it's like we wandered into Tommy Wiseau in the room. It doesn't make literal sense anymore. Which brings us to bad.
Yes.
Whew, okay. Here's a little bit of slut-shaming about Pamela. She's awfully nasty to me these days. Savvy paused. Do you think I should do her? Mary blew smoke. Not if you want to pass your next blood test. First of all, blood tests are not really pass-fail.
Yeah.
And that's definitely a STI, STD joke. And I don't like that. That's not good.
No.
Oh, and then I have I think you already said it. What gives you the right, Pamela? You're not a god. You're not even homecoming queen.
So no. I think that has to be like my favorite thing.
You're not a god. You're not even homecoming queen.
Not even homecoming queen. Sick burn. Like for real. Like sick burn into it.
And then we have more with Tom. We've met. She's a cheerleader. Yeah, I'm not one of those. Mary brightened. But I am homecoming queen. That's pretty impressive, don't you think? No. Nobody thinks that.
No one outside of your tiny Idaho town thinks anything of it.
You're full of shit. I'm a human being. I'm not some fat-headed sack of gray potatoes like you. What?
Rude.
What? I think our level of mutual trust is about as low as an ant's ass. I don't know if that's actually a saying. I've never heard it. I thought it was terrible.
It's hilarious in the fact that it is so dumb.
Yeah. He said having sex with Pamela Poole was like riding a skateboard on ice.
Oh.
I don't know what that means. At all?
It just sounds real slippery, and I don't think I like the implications.
Not great is a way to say that, I guess.
Yeah.
And then I've gone to a lot of trouble to bring you back to life. You have to look at the bright side. This isn't such a bad place to be. You can start sculpting again. Why, I'll even pose nude. Meanwhile, this poor guy has no heart, can't even cry, and can't see. And all he feels is pain.
Yeah. Mary, he, number one, just wants to go back to wherever he just was.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to see you naked right now because, number one, he can't. And number two, last thing on his mind is seeing you naked one more time. He's like, please just give me the sweet release of death again.
Dear God. Dear God, Mary. Dear God.
Yeah.
All right. I think that brings us to the last act, where we give our final thoughts and ratings out of 5 pikes. And Z, I'm sorry, you're going to have to go first.
That's fine. Overall, unnecessary. entry. Because again, I just still will never understand why this book happened to me. Or the world. The world.
You just had to lay there while it happened to you.
Yeah, it just like, it happened. It sure is a book that exists. Do I recommend that you guys read it? Not particularly, unless you've got some time to kill and have this on hand and you're like, yeah, sure, why not? So I'm gonna give it a big old single.
Single pike?
One pike.
Okay.
Well, yeah, no,
you can put something on there if you want and give it a little extra.
I was gonna give it maybe a 1.5, but 1 is fine. One is fine.
Don't talk yourself into it. It's okay.
Yeah, no, it's my least favorite entry. I'm pretty sure I read it when it came out, but I don't think I liked it then either, and I just forgot that it happened. So there we go.
Wow, okay. Cassie, I'm not going to make you go first before me.
Okay.
Unless you want to.
No, I don't care.
Okay.
I'm not picking.
Then I'm also giving it 1. But in my case, it's literally Mr. Poopy Butthole sitting on the edge of the dug-up grave. That's my 1. Woo-wee.
Yeah.
Woo-wee.
It was the comment, the Homecoming Queen one, that really and Mr. Barker, that together they earned this 1 star.
And again, if that epilogue hadn't happened, I'd probably be giving it 2. I might even be giving it Pikes. It might not even just be a Rick and Morty character that has nothing to do with this. We were gone for 2 months. And coming back to this was hard.
So excited for more.
Okay, Cassie.
Okay.
What do you got?
I've got, so one thing also that I wanted to mention about one thing I hated in this book that I didn't mention because it didn't fit anywhere else. Like a big note on my piece of paper that I wrote was sandals in November, because why was Tom wearing sandals? Why did he have to be wearing sandals? Like leather sandals. That means his toes are out. Like she can see his toes. Why? Why did that have to be
he
a defining
probably had
thing?
perfect toes.
No such thing. Absolutely no. And they didn't milk and open-toed sandals in one book. Absolutely not for me.
Not gonna lie,
that was
though.
too much.
That does sound like something someone in Idaho would do.
It does, and I hate it because he's an alien. He shouldn't be acting like Idahoans, or I don't know what they're called. It was just neither of those things. It makes sense. Like if he were just some Idaho boy, if Jerry crawled up out of the grave and was like, "Where are my sandals and my milk?" then I'd be like, "Yeah, gross, sure, though that makes sense." Instead, I'm like, why does an alien want milk and sandals? That part, I don't get it.
That's a very reasonable point.
Yes, I think so too. So for that.
For that alone, yes.
Yes, those alone, I detracted a whole bunch of stars. But I will say,
You're like, everything else, totally.
Wait, hold on. A whole bunch literally implies that had those 2 elements not been there.
Okay, because let me explain. There was that moment that reminded me of Clueless. Like, that's way harsh, Ty. Like, There was that, the homecoming queen. And then also, there was a point in the book where Mary and Pamela get into an argument. Mary literally slaps her in the face and then is like, "Later, bitch," and walks away. And I was like, fucking iconic. Like, that gave it earned a whole star from that alone.
Whoa.
So, yeah. So
your rating was in constant flux here in this book.
It really was. Also, I will say, because I'm sure there are people listening and they're just like, "Oh, I liked this book." To everybody else's credit, this feels like a Pike book. It is very solid.
Oh yeah, this is one of the pikiest books we've ever read.
Absolutely.
Like, there would be no feeling like this is another author. Honestly.
No, absolutely not. And this would not work for any other. Like, if anybody else had put this book out, I would I would never read anything else by them, to be completely honest with you. I'm just, not to be rude, but because this is a Pike book and because it has so many elements that make me love other Pike books, I have to give it credit for that. So overall, I'm
very curious. I'm very excited, Cassie. I'm very excited.
I'm giving it 2 stars with
stars.
Oh, 2 Pikes. Sorry, 2 Pikes with a cover band, a cool covers album right there on the side. Yeah.
Now, is it on LP or is it on CD or is it on cassette?
Oh, it's got to be a cassette, I think, actually, for the times. Yeah, so it's vibey.
0.25 maybe?
I'm going to say that because Cool Covers was such a stupid name, that also detracted a little bit, so it's 0.25, yeah. Yeah. Not a full point, not a full half, because it was such a dumb name. If it had been named anything else, or if it wasn't a cover band, I might have let it slide. But yeah,
well,
so it was a wild ride.
Yeah, that was. I mean, the book was not boring.
No, that's for sure.
And I have read some boring Pike. And like, when you surprise me in prose, even if it's bad, I'm a little excited. And I was surprised a lot in this book. I'll just say that.
I did laugh a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a fun read.
Even if it was...
No, it was not boring.
And we've read like Final Friends and Remember Me, like after those 2 trilogies that we had such like up and down times with, like this was honestly, it was a like trash, but it was fun trash, which is endearing, I think.
It is.
I mean, I'm speaking for myself, I guess.
No, you know what? I'm actually rethinking my rating.
Oh, see?
I'm going to put...
You too.
So I still have Mr. Poopy Butthole sitting on the edge of the grave, but I'm putting the desiccated corpse of Jerry at the bottom, and I'm calling it a half Pike.
Nice.
There you go.
Nice.
So there we go. There we go. Okay, well, Z, you waited a long time to come on this podcast.
Worth it.
Good. I'm glad because, it could go either way with a book like this. Why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you and your podcast and other things online?
Yes. Well, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at GoodnightGoldie. And then the podcast is Ghosts N Heauxs. New episodes come out every Wednesday. It's true crime and all things paranormal, because me and my best friend are paranormal investigators.
You should spell hose.
Oh, yes. It is HeauxS, because we're fancy.
Fancy.
You can find us on all the social medias, Ghosts N Heauxs. It's Ghosts, the letter N, and then HeauxS. We're all over the place.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And Cassie, where can we find you online? And tell us about your new book.
Oh, yeah. I completely forgot to do that. And I was thinking beforehand I needed to do it. Thank you.
No
okay,
problem.
so you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Control-Alt-Cassie, CTRL-C. Wait, nope, that's not right. CTRL-ALT-CASSIE. And I also have a Patreon and an art shop where I sell art, bookmarks, resin stuff, and books. Which, speaking of books, I have a book coming out, my 90s YA horror novella, on July 15th, but it is currently available to pre-order in my Etsy, and you can get to my shop at shopletsgetgalactic.com.
Awesome. See, well, I look out for you for your promotion, of course. You can find me at coopersbeckett.com and on all the social media at coopersbeckett. I have a sex education book coming out in October called The Pegging Book. If you know what that is, or if you're easily offended, I mean, either you want to know more or you don't. It's a sex education book. If you want my horror novels, you can find them at coopersbeckett.com and at spectralinspector.com. That was the least organized I've ever been,
no, but
I think.
You should mention your new covers.
Oh, yes. I just redid the covers for the 2 Osgood books that have been released already, and I am so excited about them. They look awesome. They're very queer. They're very rainbow. And the second book is probably, by the time this goes out, the second book will be available with new art inside it. And I'm so excited about that because the second book didn't have art for the longest time, and I'm finally rectifying that. So,
Woo! Yay!
SpectralInspector.com. Now, Cassie, tell them where they can find our show.
You can find us on all social media at the PikeCast. We really like when you share pictures of your Pike books and tag us. You can use the hashtag #ShowUsYourPike, and we'll be able to retweet it or share it to our stories, depending on where you're tagging us. We also have a Patreon that helps us keep things running, and you get early access to our episodes now that we're back from our little hiatus. You'll also get stickers and bookmarks and stuff, depending on which tier you're on, plus access to digital books from me and Cooper. So you can get to that at patreon.com/thepikecast.
And we want to say that we appreciate the hell out of the patrons who stuck with us during our hiatus.
Yes, we love y'all.
we appreciate everybody, but you guys are awesome. And we can't thank you enough, because sometimes life gets in the way and things like podcasts have to occasionally fall away, and it's hard to do. And we appreciate your support and your endless enthusiasm for the PikeCast. It's so gratifying.
And just keeping us company, because we have a little special Patreon Discord, and we get to just chat about movies, books, anything, not even just completely Pike stuff, although there is a lot of that as well. And if you've recently seen the new trailer for the Midnight Club that's coming out, we've been talking about that, and we're very excited to watch it.
Well, and that's one of the things I want to hit before we close up here. The Midnight Club, the first real Pike adaptation. I'm going to say that because the other one was a Lifetime movie, right?
But I like the other one.
Okay.
Tatiana Ali. She was so good.
Okay, there was another one, but the first real one of the modern... Hey, it's being made by Mike Flanagan. The Haunting of Hill House and Midnight Mass. We're very excited about this.
Yes.
It's coming on Friday, October 7th, and we will officially be doing a transition to an episode-by-episode review of that whole series. And we're hoping, if we can make this work, to bring you interviews with the creators and some of the directors and some of the writers. So there's a lot coming from the PikeCast. We're not just popping back up with the last remaining Pike books. There are still a bunch. We still have a bunch on deck. Speaking of on deck, your homework for the next episode is The Hollow Skull. And when we presented that to our guest for that episode, it was very, like, exclamation points. The Hollow Skull. That's what I want. So, very exciting, and we're happy to be back. And until next time, pleasant dreams.
Woo! I went with a spookier vibe that time.
Yeah, no, totally. I'm picking up what you're putting down, Cassie.
Yes, thank you.
You survived the night, friends. You can peek out from under your covers and see the first blues of dawn out the window. Thanks for spending the night with the PikeCast, and we hope you'll join us again next time. Until then, Pikers, pleasant dreams.
So we start with guests by asking them some questions. Cassie, would you like to ask the first question?
Yes, all I have open is Zencaster because I'm on the laptop. Can you tell me what the first question is?
Okay.
I'm sorry. I have
the first question is, how did you discover
Okay,
Pike?
all right. Let's ask me again.
Okay. Cassie, would you like to ask the first question?
Yes. I would love to. So natural.
Listeners, you can tell we're a little rusty. We're a little rusty.
We're
It's
doing
okay.
Great. We're awesome. So Z, please tell us how you got into Christopher Pike.